Welcome, everyone. How wonderful to be together today in One Mountain, Many Paths. Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Mark Goffney call our mission a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. We are activating a new humanity and we are awakening as a new species. Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. As a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo, no one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. I am Christina Tehel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jamie Long, and Jacqueline Clark, and we are delighted to gather together with each and every one of you for week 276 of our live broadcast. What a privilege it is to be part of a global community where we support humanity's flourishing. Welcome home, everyone. Join Jamie Long, David Cicerici, and myself for our 11th hour study course about the most pressing issues of our time and our response ability towards the future. We've come to the edge of the human story. We've come to the place where that story can self-terminate, the 11th hour, the final chapter. We don't want that story to end. This course meets next Saturday, January 29th is the last day you can join us, as it is will be our second gathering, and you can join us, and we would love that, by reaching out to Jamie Long, whose email is in the chat box now. On another note, care to receive mystical gifts by stepping into the work and practice of being part of creating the great Homo Amor library, Memory of the Future, reach out to me for the holy opportunity. My email is also in the chat box now. Today, I want to celebrate two people who work diligently in the community spaces of One Mountain, Many Paths. These two people support Dr. Goffney with time, hard work, and dedication, and give to this community in so many ways. And with all my heart, I want to thank Suzette Mesa and myself, actually. We bow to our holy devotion to the evolution of love in all the ways we contribute. Use the Zoom and Facebook chat functions to say hello, to let us know where you're from, to resonate the Dharma, and to speak your prayers. On Zoom, check that your chat settings say everyone so that we can all hear from you. Today, because we are playing clips from the movie Don't Look Up, we will stop streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube. So if you are able, please do join us on Zoom. And the Zoom link is in the description on both of those platforms. Sign up for and read our weekly emails. There you find our replays, our community activities, our featured videos, volunteer opportunities, celebrations, surprise, and inspiration. So don't miss those emails. What to expect today. First, a Dharma recap from myself from last week's broadcast. Then Dr. Goffney sets our intention. And then David will resonate our evolutionary love code that we're working with. And then we move into our evolutionary sermon with Dr. Mark Goffney, and on occasion, sometimes with a clip from Barbara Marx Hubbard. Then we move into meditation to enter prayer, and to close, Krista invites us deeper into community, and then we bring everyone on for an intimate dance practice and our goodbyes. Mark writes evolutionary love codes. Mark and Barbara studied those codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes crystallize the new story of humanity, quote, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. We have the privilege to be part of the emergence of these first principles and first values. The Dharma gates are open, and every week we are blessed. To serve each other and the evolution of love, our commitment is to the quality of what we are communicating, and for each of us to take part in this creative process of articulating a new story for a new humanity. So we consciously decide we won't forcefully try to end at the end of the hour, but promise fullness and explosion, to let the magic evolve, to serve the evolutionary process. And we do our best to end around 11 a.m. Pacific time. Of course, if you need to leave early, please watch the replay, and we look forward to being with you next week. I welcome all who are new. We need you. Know that each week is a standalone, and every week builds on the week before. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling the new story. Now for my recap from last week. Don't Look Up, Part 3. From the need to be desired to the right to be desired, the deeper response to existential risk. Last week was our third of a series of uncovering the deeper meanings of the movie Don't Look Up, about two astronomers who realize a planet-destroying comet is hurtling towards Earth. We're looking at the movie as a portal for existential risk rooted in the failure to tell a new story. And that's a failure in which Don't Look Up participates. In fact, physicist Brian Cox on the BBC, for example, looks at Don't Look Up as a materialist story. He assumes the movie's premise is that there's no real value in the cosmos, no real meaning, that it's all made up here. The story we tell ourselves about who we are either evolves or devolves the source code of consciousness and culture. Story is the only factor that irrevocably changes the vector of history itself. We don't mean a new made-up story, but rather a story that integrates the leading edges of validated insights and all the wisdom streams that become a universal grammar of value that is a context for our diversity and generates a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. The movie doesn't get anywhere near that. Here they are, days and hours before it could be death. In the middle-income Western world, we've displaced death. We engage in what Ernest Becker calls the denial of death. But death always discloses life, and the movie is no different. We looked at the desire scenes last week, or the one desire scene, in the shadow of the valley of death. In that moment of desire between the new friend Yule and the young scientist Kate, in which Yule is saying, "Give me the gift of your desire." Kate experiences his desire and Yule experiences that she wants it. So in that moment, they've transcended death. Orgasm is called a little death because in orgasm, we cry out, "Oh God," meaning, "Oh, eternity." We have an experience in desire of the eternity that resides in the moment, and we feel the infinite value. What seems to be a transitory moment of desire is actually the eros of all of eternity. Desire is not the strange human thing that arises in the human being, which undermines our sense of being a social self or enlightened or a good citizen. Every human being has a right to desire and a right to be desired. We need a new narrative of desire in which we realize that desire is an intrinsic value of reality, awake and alive in us. The second set of clips we watched last week were about the relationship between the son, Jason, and the mother, President Janie Orlean. Jason, when he's before the shadow of death, speaks for all of humanity, denuded of the mother. He says 3 times in the different scenes, "She's coming back, Mom." The experience of mother is the experience of I am welcome in the universe, that we belong here, that value is real. Mother is desire. Mother is the intrinsic value that lies at the core of reality. Mother is the knowing that it all matters, that meaning is in every exchange, every conversation, every love story, every single moment is infinitely meaningful. Now I invite us to more deeply enter the holy and the sacred spaces of One Mountain, Many Paths. And I turn my word to you, Dr. Mark Goffney.
Right. Thank you very much. Right. And what a beautiful Dharma recapitulation. And it was a little longer than usual, appropriately, because we actually had so much to cover and so just gorgeously done, Christina Tahel. Thank you so very, very, very much. Oh my God. Welcome everyone. Like welcome. And at the core of everything is to know that we're welcome, right? The core question that we have to ask in our lives is there a welcome home sign in cosmos? And Einstein intuited it for a moment when he says, is the universe friendly? But it's more in a way, it was an intuitive question to a reporter. The reporter said, like, what's the big question? He kind of off the cuff said, was the universe friendly? What he meant, or he should have meant, but what we mean is there, are we welcome? It's the ultimate question. And our knowing here in One Mountain, Many Paths is that, in fact, the answer to that question is a resounding yes. And that yes is the intrinsic, radical positivity of cosmos. It's the very yes of the Big Bang. It's the yes when the unmanifest became manifest. When infinity disclosed itself as finitude. When the infinity of intimacy, sometimes called the implicate order, other times called God, other times called Mat, other times called Geist, right? Other times called Atman as Brahman, other times called Adonai Elohim, otherwise called the Great One, right? She goes by many names. But when the infinity of intimacy said, I want to have lunch with you, right? I don't want to be alone. And somehow I want to love you into existence and gift you with all of me and share my very identity with you, which is the moment of the unmanifest becoming manifest, which is the beginning, the biogenesis, the Big Bang, the cosmogenesis, right? That moment of cosmogenesis is a yes, right? It's the same yes that explosion, that big bang, it is the same yes that we experience, right? When we see something gorgeous and we say, oh my God, that is, yes. It's the same yes we experience at the height of rapture, right? As it explodes, right? In the climaxes of embodiment, we cry out, oh God. And underneath, oh God, we're saying, oh eternity. And we cry out, yes. And we cry out the name of the other person. And that's transcultural. And that's transtemporal. That's across space and across time. Why? Because in that moment, we understand yes. And that yes echoes the yes of the Big Bang. And the yes is saying, we're welcome. The yes is saying, we're needed. And at this moment, as we literally stand poised between utopia and dystopia, we need to actually take responsibility for the knowing of that yes. Because that yes says there's intrinsic value in cosmos. That value is not merely a fiction, as my friend Yuval says. It's not merely a figment of our imagination. It's not merely a social construction of reality. Value is innate to cosmos. And we are part of cosmos's expression of its own innate value. So when I cry out at the moment of ecstasy, oh God, in your name, and yes, it's actually the infinity of intimacy, oh God, saying yes to your name. It's the infinity of value that is your life. And you actually have the direct experience that you're intended, right? And you're needed, right? And you're desired, right? And you're love adored, and you're recognized, and you're chosen, right? By all of reality. And those are the basic core needs of a human being beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Wow. And so this is a big moment. I spent very, very early in the morning reading a series of studies and papers from various sources about the crisis in hospitals, particularly in the United States, but also in other countries in the world. And the core of the crisis has actually tragically, its root cause, nothing to do with COVID-19. It's actually the structure, and this is particularly in the United States, the structure of hospitalization, right, itself is a win-lose metrics. The hospital is no longer a place of unique self-medicine. It's no longer a place of caring and nurturing. It's corporatized. It's turned into commodified units of time, and decisions about health and wholeness have been hijacked from the doctor, right, to the university administration, which itself is owned by larger interests that are looking at bottom line graphs of profit loss. That's tragic, right? And the breakdown, right, the breakdown in hospitals is only in some small sense overcome by the doctors and nurses who are actually putting in insane amounts of time, overtime, right, to an absolute breaking point, which is why doctors and nurses in America have virtually the highest suicide rate, because they have a sense of first principles and first values. But the new generation of doctors and the new generation of nurses are actually growing up without first principles and first values. And then the whole thing begins to implode, right? That's where we are. We're at this place between utopia and dystopia, facing existential risk in so many ways because we're not looking up, because we're actually operating, right, under the assumption in our bodies that we're not welcome in cosmos, that we don't have intrinsic value. And all moments of intrinsic value, my friends, are priceless. All moments of intrinsic value are priceless. All moments of intrinsic value can't be measured. They can't be bought. Right? Money can buy you marriage, but money can't buy you love. The Beatles weren't wrong, right? It's always the priceless moment. It's immeasurable, right? It can't be commodified, right? It can't be won through rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, right? So if I don't know that I'm welcome in the cosmos, and if I don't experience the eros of my own innate, gorgeous value, my irreducible beauty and dignity, right? So I feel this emptiness. So I've got to cover over this emptiness, this failure of eros, with pseudo-eros. And pseudo-eros always means a false story about who I am. It means, right, I'll place you outside the circle. You're the loser, I'm the winner. And by placing you outside the circle, I have an illusion of being inside the circle, right? So that's what we're about. What we're about here at One Mountain Together and Welcome, like mad welcome. We're here to come together and to actually tell the new story of value. And at the core of the new story of value is we are welcome in cosmos. And I want to understand something with you. This is critical to understand, right? Friends, in the old world, what mattered was the legacy media, right? The key media outlets. What mattered was, what the particular university department is saying. What mattered was how government agencies decided things should be. But actually, the legacy media, right, is no longer, right, authoritative, right? And the university departments are no longer, right, speaking into the heart of culture. And the governmental agencies are no longer, right, that which is, right, charting the course. We've actually lost our rudder. But paradoxically, in this moment, what's happened is the center, the heart of culture has moved from the classical legacy institutions, right, to the heart flutter of those who feel the call of value and are willing to stake their lives on it as lovers of reality, as outrageous lovers, as a holy band, and to speak truth to power and to work together to articulate the new story of value, right? And to, just like we would in wartime, right, in our war room, but in our peace room, in our room that stands for a better world, to lay down our lives, meaning to give everything we have, right, to actually tell the new story. The new story is not being told at the university departments. I did my doctorate in Oxford. My co-president at the center did his doctorate in Harvard. We've written way too many footnotes. That's not where it's happening. Oxford and Harvard are bankrupt. And Harvard's actually not bankrupt financially, it's bankrupt morally. And if you've actually tracked Harvard in the last several years, it's spending all of its time actually focusing on its trust fund and making decisions based on its trust fund and its wealth. Harvard itself is lost in a win-lose metrics, as is Oxford, which is essentially a business on multiple levels. You can't, right? The information ecology is not going to come from the university anymore. It's not going to come from, like, the trusted figures in the legacy media. Right? We actually have to come together as bands of outrageous lovers and actually be revolutionaries and actually tell the new story. And the reason I was excited about this movie, Don't Look Up, is not that they told the new story, right? They didn't tell the new story. They avoided the new story. They avoided any statements of value. But they focused the lens on this Don't Looking Up, and that was important. And the force, if you will, she, right? Eros, right? Meaning speaks through a movie when the intention is good, even if the movie makers weren't thinking of it. And so we're using this movie. It's not that we're spending 6-7 weeks in one movie. We're actually using the movie as a foil to actually hear the unconscious, the hidden voices. We're engaged in cultural hermeneutics, meaning we're reading the texts of life. We're reading the text of culture, and we're unpacking much larger issues, much more critical understandings, right, through, right, stepping into these sacred texts of popular culture. Wow. And we're doing it for one reason, because we're the revolution. Because we can't rely on other people being the revolution. It's ours to do. We're taking full responsibility for the future together, loving each other, right? We're fully responsible to generate the new story and the new story of value. And we're actually taking the position of the atheist. And what I mean by that is, and it's subtle, it's beautiful. One great master in the 19th century, Nachman of Breslov, says, why did divinity create atheism, right? And Nachman answers, so that when it comes time to stand, you're an atheist, meaning you don't rely on some God who's going to do it, right? You actually say, it's only me. It's only me and my friends. This is ours to do, right? Excalibur, right? The sword of Arthur has been pulled, and it's in our hands, and it's our quest, right? And it's our code of chivalry, right? It's ours to do. Even as we know paradoxically that the infinity of intimacy, the divine force lives in us and holds us. And every place we fall into her hands. So it's a crazy honor to be with you, right? And to love each other outrageously. And to be in this conversation, to record everyone and to put it into the source code of culture and to articulate these understandings together for the sake of the whole, right? For the sake of the evolution of love, for the sake of facing into existential risk and understanding that its root cause is a failure of story and that it's ours to do, it's our quest, right? To retell that story of value based in first principles and first values. So it's my mad delight to turn to David, who's going to resonate the code. We've been working with the same code the last 3 weeks. We've shifted and edited the code this week. David's going to blow it into our hearts, right, with his life force and soul and wonder. Right after Taheli kind of opened us up with the Dharma recapitulation, and then we're going to dive into either one or two sets of scenes, which we're going to look at about 5 minutes, and then we're off. Then we're going all the way. David, take us inside, brother. Here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. I feel energized by the call to value that you're inviting us into. So friends, this evolutionary love code is slightly updated, as Mark has discussed just a moment ago. So I'll move through it and then I'll put it in the chat box. The first shock of existence is the death of the human being. Existential risk is the second shock of existence. The second shock of existence is the death of humanity. There are two forms of the death of humanity. One is the literal potential extinction of humanity at the physical level. This is the first form of existential risk. There is a second form of existential risk, not the death of humanity, but the death of our humanity. You cannot respond to the first shock without the second shock, or to the second shock without the first shock. You cannot respond to either the first shock or the second shock of existence without going inside and finding out, what do we really know? We need to know we have the capacity to access intrinsic first principles and first values of the cosmos that are not fictions, not social constructions of reality, nor figments of our imagination. Rather, we have the capacity to go inside and access evolving first principles and first values embedded within a story of value. Humanity will not have the capacity to look up and respond to existential risk until we move beyond and articulate evolving first values and first principles. Only first principles and first values embedded in a story of value have the capacity to respond to the first and second shock of existence, for looking up itself is a first principle and first value. In the end, it is only evolving first values and first principles that have the authority to demand you look up, love madly, love yourself, love your life, love me, love my life, and love our lives together, and be willing to die rather than violate the integrity of that love. This is the only true meaning of being alive. And then we realize that you and me will never, and none of us will ever ultimately die. For life and love are eternal, and death is a night between 2 days. And yet from this perspective of this moment in evolutionary time, whether humanity lives or dies depends on us. With that beautiful resonant code, I turn my word back to you, Dr. Mark.
Friends, we're going to look at a set of clips now. It's going to take about 5 minutes. We've edited them together from different parts of the movie. So we're going to look at them. Then we're going to go deep dive. The topic of the clips is death. And death is critical. And David resonated the code, right, so beautifully. Two kinds of death. First shock of existence, I die. Second shock of existence, humanity might die. First shock of existence, the death of the human being. The second shock of existence, the potential death of humanity. And how I understand those changes everything about life. Right? How I understand death completely redefines how I understand life. And Jung wasn't wrong. The psychologist Jung wasn't wrong when he said, I can't establish mental health in my patients unless they have some access to the experience of life beyond death, to the experience of immortality. And I would say that the dividing issue today in culture is actually precisely that. How do I actually understand my relationship to death? And we have a kind of fundamentalist view, which has this image of kind of God in the sky, having nothing to do with the world, denies the evolutionary process. The human being is an inert piece of dead matter that God happened to put a soul in. And if you obey God, you get rewarded and you go to heaven, and heaven happens to have harps playing. So that's one fundamentalist vision. But then you've got a kind of materialist vision. That's what I would call creationism. Then you have scientism, right? Scientism says it's all material, right? It's all just material. There's nothing here other than atoms material. And when your material body disintegrates, collapses, it's the end of the story. Because whatever consciousness means, it emerges, right, as an emergent from your material body, but it's not fundamental. So when your material body disappears, everything disappears. So that's scientism, that's creationism. And that's the great battle. And there's different versions of each. My colleague Sam Harris is a great expresser of scientism, right? As was Derek Parfit, right? As is Nick Bostrom, right? There's a whole school, as is Sean Carroll, as is Brian Cox, right? Who Christine Amlon mentioned because we talked about him a couple of weeks ago, a physicist in England, right? It's part of a very, very influential school that has entered into Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, right? They've entered into the source code of culture, and they've basically challenged and said, no, materialism. And of course, this position is old, and it's not new. It started with Epicurus. It was one of the famous expressions of it in ancient Greece, right? The notion that it's over when you die. And they're in rebellion against, right, creationism and that caricatured version that I just described. And both views are true but partial and don't actually exhaust the evidence available, right? The deeper understanding is what we're going to call cosmoerotic humanism, right? That's the deepest understanding that integrates the best insights on both sides of the aisle, from scientism, from creationism, right, into a deeper and wider view and understanding of our relationship to death, and our understanding that it's not over when it's over. And that actually, when you marshal all of the evidence, the conclusion is shocking beyond imagination. And I want to unpack that conclusion with you. And I want, with your permission, to try and demonstrate today that I'm going to tell you nothing you don't already know. That if you actually do a deep interior meditation, there are 12 distinct reasons that live inside of you that you have access to, but have not accessed, that tell you irrevocably that life goes on beyond death. That's a big deal. Let's start with, right, that's the theme of the movie. Let's start with this set of clips. If I had more time, I'd play you 2 sets of clips, but we'll start with one. Maybe we'll do another one at the end. Okay, here we go. Take us inside 5D. Right, this is a set of 4 or 5 clips we've linked together in which the theme of death moves through the movie.
It's headed directly at Earth, and it really likely will hit.
This sounds very, very exciting. Exploding stars, like stars actually explode. So how big is this thing? Could it like destroy someone's house? Is that possible?
Well, Comet Didiaski, which is what it will officially be named, is somewhere.
After her?
Yeah, after
her.
her.
Oh,
What
congratulations.
an honor, yeah, right, congratulations.
It's somewhere between 6 and 9 kilometers across. So
It's big.
it would damage the entire planet, not just a house, you know.
The entire planet. Okay, well, as it's damaging, will it hit this one house in particular that's right on the coast of New Jersey? It's my ex-wife's house. I need it to be hit. Can we make that happen?
You and Shelley have a great relationship. No, you stop.
Listen, in all
You
fair-
need to stop.
I will, but in all fairness,
gonna
I actually
Poke you to
paid
death with
for
this
the
pepper.
house.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, are we not being clear? We're trying to tell you that the entire planet is about to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's just something we do around here. We just keep the bad news light.
Right, it helps the medicine go down. And speaking of medicine, tomorrow we've got a
Well,
two-part...
maybe the destruction of the entire planet isn't supposed to be fun. Maybe it's supposed to be terrifying and unsettling.
Please don't do that.
And you should stay up all
Please.
night, every night, crying. When we're all 100% for sure gonna fucking die!
We should have deflected this comment when we had the fucking chance, but we didn't do it. I mean, I don't know why we didn't do it. And now that they're actually firing scientists like me for speaking out, for opposing them. And I'm sure many of the people out there aren't even going to listen to what I just said because they have their own political ideology. But I assure you, I am not on one side or the other. I'm just telling you the fucking truth.
I think this would be a good time to establish that Isherwell and the president have both said that there's benefits to be had.
Right, well, the president of the United States is fucking lying! Look, I'm just like all of you. I hope to God that this president knows what she's doing. I hope she's got us all taken care of. But the truth is, I think this whole administration has completely lost their fucking mind! And I think we're all gonna die! Look, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I just want to go home more than anything.
Okay, so let's see if we can gather this, friends, okay? So you have these two clips and they're intense. And the clips are about the second shock of existence. Not the death of the individual human being, the first shock of existence that we experience at the dawn of humanity when we realize physically we're going to die, the individual human being. But the second shock of existence, right, the death of humanity. But these two shocks are intimately bound up. Now, let's stay close for a second. The statement that's made by DiCaprio, who is Randall Mindy, the doctor, and the statement made by Kate Diabasky, right, who is his student, the scientist, is, we're all going to die. Right? They scream out, we're all going to die. But friends, here's the paradox. The paradox is, of course, they're right. That's absolutely true. And actually, any life saved is only death deferred. Right? When you save a life, so you're deferring death by 10 years, by 20 years, by 5 years, by 30 years. But the end of the story is that we're going to die. That's a very big deal. Clearly, we have this intuition. We had it for a couple thousand years, but it's now atrophying. It's now getting lost. We had this intuition that every dimension of life we can save is intrinsically valuable and needs to be saved. And so we stand for life. And we appropriately stand for life. That's been our position. That position is now slowly getting lost. And what happens in the movie, where this band of elite people actually escape planet Earth, is where much of dimensions of the leadership of reality is going on multiple levels today. But let's put that aside. Let's stay with the kind of core premise that we actually still have access to that value of life. We've got to stand for life. Okay, that's good. We stand for life. We got to stand for every individual life. We got to stand for the quality of every individual life. Okay, let's take that as a given for now. I'm not going to go down that road. It's an unbelievably important idea. The notion that we stand for every life and for the quality of every life, that itself is a huge gain. That itself would be a momentous revolution. We're losing access to that today. And when I talked earlier today about corporatizing, right, the hospital system, the direct result of that is a much higher rate of death. And that much higher rate of death is directly justified by an increased bottom line, right, in the privatized hospital system. That's shocking. That's shocking. So, but I want to put that aside from now. I want to actually focus on something which is actually even more essential, which is they're actually telling the truth. We are going to die, right? In other words, that's a big deal. And we're so engaged, and we talked about it last week, and Christina recapitulated it in our Dharma recap. We're so engaged in the denial of death. We displace death. We kind of think we've got plenty of time. We can't quite imagine our own death. So when someone screams and says, you're going to die, we reject it. But actually, the only thing that we can actually do in response to someone screaming, you're going to die, is to actually face into it. And if I don't face into death, I'm not alive. And when I face into death, I need to actually know, what do I actually know about death? And why is death important? And why is death an inexorable part of my life? Right? Why did my teacher, was 32 years old, right, standing next to me when I was 16, right, who was super healthy, just drop down and die in the middle of a party, looked up at me and said, hey, go on without me. I'm going to be okay. And he was dead, 10 seconds later. Right? I've buried not one, not two, and not three students, right, when I was teaching for many years in the Middle East, right, who were 18 and 19 and who were killed. How many of you, right, know someone who died unexpectedly, quote unquote, before their time? But we're sure it's not going to happen to us. But here's the story. Even if you don't die before your time, you're going to die. And actually, the entire map of priorities and to-do lists and egoic issues and traumas and unresolved anxieties, all of that's going to disappear. Actually, everything that you think about, most of the time, most of the day, 99% of what you think about, 99% of the day will be, in a very short amount of time, irrelevant. You're going to be dead. And the whole egoic game is going to be gone. We're going to die. That's a big deal, right? And it's only by unflinchingly facing into the reality of death and then feeling into it and feeling what it means to us in our bodies and why it matters and why it's important that we actually can become alive. I don't trust anyone who hasn't faced death. You can't trust a person who hasn't faced death, right? And you can't actually live and be alive if you don't face death. Okay, so this is a big deal. Let's try and find this. So here's number one. Okay, and I want to try and understand this. I want to face into death. I want to understand why we need death. And I want to actually see, do we actually have information that tells us about how we should hold death? So here's number one. And I want to try and kind of go and do this, step by step. I'm going to do this. We got about 10 hours to do together. We're going to do it in about 20 minutes. Okay, so let's go every step. So number one, why are we afraid of death? It's the first question, right? Like why are we afraid of death at all? Okay. So we're afraid of death for 4 reasons. Right? One, and let's all find this in ourselves, right? We have a fear, right, of nothingness, right? Our sense that death, oblivion. Try and find that in your body, right? I don't exist. Can you find that? Not easy to find, right? That's terrifying. It's terrifying, right? Death is terrifying, right? It's a horror, and we can move through it. We can move through the terrifying nature of death to an incredible sense of joy and freedom, but not by looking away, not by looking down, by actually walking through. So I'm going to walk through to freedom and joy with you, but let's start with terrifying, right? It's terrifying. The notion I'm not going to be here, the notion that all disappears, and then I'm actually in oblivion and nothingness kind of disappears me, right, in this moment and makes everything insignificant. So that's one. Second fear of death. The second fear of death is a fear of, what's the second fear of death, friends? It's a fear of accountability, right? I'm held accountable. I'm held accountable. There's a fear of, let's call it judgment. When I say judgment, I don't mean fire and brimstone judgment, but I mean judgment. I'm accountable. And all that stuff that I did that actually no one actually knew about, and the things I got away with and the things that were out of integrity, right, that I've kind of slipped by, right? So I've got this sense in me that I'm held accountable. Now notice, stay close, the second fear of death is the opposite of the first, right? If there's nothingness, there's no accountability. Does everyone get that? If there's nothingness, no accountability, game over. So I've got this second fear of death, which is opposite of the first. Does everyone get that? My second fear of death is I'm accountable. right? There's judgment, right? And I can't talk my way through it, and I can't fudge on my tax returns, and maybe fudging on my tax returns is one of the things I'm worried about having disclosed, right? So that's two. That's the second fear. The third fear is I have a fear of what I would call failed significance, that somehow my life wasn't significant, right? And failed significance could mean, one, right, violations of integrity, that we already talked about. But two, it could mean I didn't achieve, I didn't create, I didn't produce, right? So failed significance, I didn't create anything. Or two, second expression of failed significance is I didn't live deeply, right? I was actually invited by reality to incredible depth, and I stayed on the surface. So either I failed to achieve, right, to create, to produce, to generate. These are fears that live in us, right? Or but I failed to live deeply, to live with depth. A third version of this fear of failed significance is I somehow failed to transform. That's part of depth, but I want to name it uniquely. I didn't transform. I failed to grow. I failed to be more, right? I failed to rise above the lowest common denominator of my humanity and to actually become who I could really be. And the fourth expression of this fear of failed significance, or this fear of not having lived my life, is the fear that I've actually failed my unique self. I haven't been me. I haven't showed up with the fullness and depth and radiance and goodness and splendor and truth and beauty that's me. And I actually have this intuitive understanding that accountability and that judgment is real, but it's not about the little things. It's not about I crossed against the light, right? It's not about that. There's a much bigger issue, which is, was I me? One of my favorite stories in the tradition in which I grew up, in Hasidism, interior sciences of the Kabbalah, is about Zushya of Anipol. And Zushya of Anipol is on his deathbed. He's one of the greatest masters. And he's about to die. And he's ecstatic at his death because he feels he's going to merge into the divine. And his whole life has been about becoming part of the one. And then he begins to cry. He begins to cry on his deathbed, and his students ask him, and why are you crying? Zushya, great master. Why are you crying? And what they mean is, you were such a great master. Your whole life was about union and mystical realization and goodness. And why are you crying? And Zushya says, because I know that when I die, I just had this realization on my deathbed that I never understood before. He says, I know that when I die, they're not going to ask me, why wasn't I Moses? They're not going to ask me, why wasn't I Abraham? And if I'm going to rewrite the story a little bit, they're not going to ask me why I wasn't Jesus or Lao Tzu. And they're not going to ask me why I wasn't Buddha. I know that when I die, there's only going to be one question. And the question is going to be, Zushya, why weren't you Zushya? Zushya, why weren't you Zushya? Mark, why weren't you Mark? Right? Each one of us. Why weren't you Jack? Why weren't you Christina? Why weren't you Terry? Why weren't you David? Why weren't you Oriana? Right? Why weren't you Mosa? Why didn't you give the gift you had to give? Why didn't you live the life you had to live? Wow. So the fear of death is a fear of failed significance. Okay? Wow. That's a very big deal. And so we've located, right, these sense of these fears of death that live in us. But now let's stay close, okay? Let's stay close together. But what does that tell me about death? It's gorgeous, right? What does it actually tell me about death? What does it tell me? And here I want to go with you, step 2. What this tells me about death is that it's actually not over when it's over. If death was over when it's over, if death meant that life ended inextricably and that we moved into nothingness, that would be the ordinary nature of reality. And there'd be no dimension of us that was mortally terrified by nothingness. The fact that we're terrified by nothingness is because nothingness is foreign to our deepest nature. Because actually, we are intrinsic existence, and we are intrinsic value, right? And we are intrinsic aliveness. And so the specter of nothingness that culture has induced, right, through a kind of materialism is nothing short of terrifying, right? It's terrifying. It's terrifying because it violates who we are. Now, stay close with me, right? In the original Hebrew, for example, the word for terrifying is yirah, Y-I-R-A-H. And yirah means two things. It means terrifying, but then it means perception, depth, consciousness. Meaning if you trace your experience of the terrifying back to its root, which is the tantric act, trace every experience back to its root, you realize at the root of your terror is your own immortality. You realize that nothingness is actually fundamentally foreign to your nature. Wow, that's a big deal. Let's go to the second step. The second step of fear of death, we said, is the sense of accountability. But the sense of accountability, if we go deep into it, right, it's not the accountability of creationism. Creationism, right, is generally associated with one or another form of fundamentalism that claims that a creator God that's external entirely to the world created reality, chose one people as the people, gave them a set of laws and precepts and rituals, and you're judged by how well you did all of those, right? And only the chosen people actually have the highest level of immortality anyways. No, that's not true. So the creationism story is not true either. Let's go deeper. Let's go to cosmoerotic humanism. Cosmoerotic humanism means the reason, right, I'm afraid, right, the reason I have a sense of, right, a fear of failed significance, a fear, right, a sense of accountability, is because I count. It's because my life matters. And my life matters because I have intrinsic dignity, because reality intended me. And reality intended me and manifested me uniquely. And there's no one who has my unique configuration of atoms, and there's no one who has my unique cellular configuration, and there's no one who has my unique DNA code, and there's also no one who has my unique gifts, and my unique quality of being, and the tone of my laughter, and the unique quality of my intimacy. And that actually I am a gift of cosmos to itself. I don't live in the universe. Right? The universe lives in me. I'm an expression of the universe. Right? So I am a unique gift of cosmos to itself. Right? When I live my unique self, right, I'm an outrageous love letter written by cosmos to itself. I'm an outrageous love letter intended by reality, written to itself. And that's my life's about. Right? And so my fear is, wow, did I write that outrageous love letter? And did I write it well? But what that actually tells me is that my life matters beyond death. Right? It tells me my life's significant beyond death. It tells me that I participate, right, in intrinsic value beyond death. And I'm going to go deep into this because it's a very big deal. Right? In other words, there'd be no accountability if there was just nothingness. That's what we said a few minutes ago. So accountability means I'm held to a bar of judgment, but not in a fire and brimstone way of evaluation. How'd I do? Right? How'd I do? Right? Meaning beyond life, I now stand, right, beyond, right, all of eternity that invites me to evaluate my life because my life had value. And that's a big deal. So just notice, here's step one, and we're going to go a bunch more steps, but step one is the very fear of death itself. If you trace the fear to its root, the fear becomes, as in the original Hebrew word, consciousness. And I realize actually my life matters, and my matter, my physical body, my matter matters. Isn't that a gorgeous word? Right? Matter physical body, but matter is not just materialist. Matter matters, right? My life matters, right? I need to know that I matter, and my matter is my embodiment. My very embodied experience of myself tells me that I matter, that my matter matters. I'm infused with meaning. Whoa, okay. So now just notice for a second, I'm not talking about near-death experiences, which are very important. I'm not talking about all the evidence from telepathy. I'm not talking about evidence about reincarnation. I'm not talking about evidence of remote viewing. I'm not talking about, right? There's an entire world of parapsychology that adduces evidence to life after death. That evidence actually happens to be in part quackery and in part valid. There's a lot of quackery, but underneath the quackery, there's actually genuine, real research. There's enormously valid evidence for life after death. But we're not talking about that. That's not our subject today. I could also do a rigorous philosophical analysis and tell you why dualism and materialism, dualism, which is the basic position of fundamentalism, that matter is empty and God is dual and God steps into matter and infuses it with meaning, is wrong. And materialism, it's only matter, there's nothing else, is wrong. And that actually matter itself matters. Matter is infused with life. Matter is eternal. I could analyze that for you philosophically. And I call that pan-interiority, meaning every exterior has an interior, and the interior, right, lives beyond the exterior. And that's the core of cosmorotic humanism, but I'm not going to do that either. We're not going to analyze that philosophically today either. Those are two very important ways to go. What I want to look at just in these next few minutes, and it's going to get like wildly beautiful and crazy and gorgeous, right? I'm madly excited just to be here with you for these few minutes. Nothing else matters, right? Meaning, in deep meaning, that we're actually going to see, as we've begun to do, but we're going to go even deeper, that actually you yourself know, I myself know, it lives inside of me, that actually it's not over when it's over. So step one, I know it's not over when it's over because the fear of nothingness, right, tells me that nothingness is an anathema to my being, because my being is not nothingness. My being participates in eternity. 1. 2, right, my fear of judgment tells me it's not over when it's over. Right? I understand that there's a larger accountability because I count and my life's significant, and therefore it's going to be evaluated because it has value. Right? That's 2. That's 2. Those are 2 ways I know inside of me, but let's go even deeper. Let's go even deeper. 3. Because I know I'm a unique self, right? I also know that there's a gift to give that was mine to do. Okay? Now, how many people feel, right, as we get towards, let's say, the last third of our lives, okay? I feel like I'm in the last third of my life, right? How many of us have this deep feeling that we didn't get to finish it all in this lifetime? And go to the chat box. Who's got that feeling? Anybody? Anybody have that feeling? Well, I didn't get to do it all. I didn't get to do a lot of the things that were really important, that really matter. Who's got that feeling? Who can find that? Who can find, right? So that feeling that I actually can access inside of me, right? Anthro-ontologically, anthro-human being ontology for real, meaning the mysteries are within us, right? I know, right? I can feel in me the truth of reality. That feeling that I'm not done is real. And that feeling that there's so much left undone. But when I say left undone, I don't mean petty items in my to-do list. I mean, in my essential life story of growing and transforming, I actually feel in my depth, I'm not done. Right? I'm not done. So that feeling of I'm not done, that my unique story's not over, right? That itself tells me that death isn't the end. See, that's not an illusion. That's not a psychological sense of grandiosity. That's a universally felt sense shared by all human beings, where I actually have a sense that my unique life force, even if I don't have the language of unique self, but I have this experience that, number one, it's worth preserving my unique life force. So I fight for life as I should. And number 2, I have this feeling that I'm not complete, that there's more to do. And I'm actually right. And I'm in the midst of the process of transformation, right? I've still got, so that feeling of my unfinished unique self itself is telling me it's not over, right? There's actually more to do. So that's 3. So that's an interior anthro-ontological knowing. Again, for those of you who've never been with us, anthro means anthropology, human being. Ontology means true knowledge about existence, meaning true knowledge about existence lives inside of me. Right? The mysteries are within us. So I know by my experience of the fear of nothingness, by my experience of the fear of not having lived with full accountability, and right, 3, the experience that, oh, I'm not done. That experience is not a psychological experience, it's a metaphysical experience. It's an ontological experience, and it tells me I'm indeed not done. And I'm in the midst of a larger cycle, of a larger play. And in death indeed is a night between 2 days. I can actually feel that in my body, right? 3, this is a big one. 4, I apologize, 4, right? How many people feel like within the period of one lifetime, all people on planet Earth experience justice and fairness? How many people experience that? Let's go to chat box. Let's see, anybody. Is there even one person? Anybody? Do we feel like within the experience of one lifetime, all people on planet Earth experience fairness and justice? Right? None. Right? Now stay with me. Now, how many of us actually have a direct experience in our bodies that justice is a true value and that fairness matters? That fairness is a value, it matters. How many people have that experience? How many people? Everybody. So just watch this. We just did an anthro-ontological experiment where we actually experienced a fragrance of enlightenment. So all of us, without exception, everybody said that there's no way to assert that everybody on planet Earth, or even most people on planet Earth, actually experience full justice or fairness or even partial justice or fairness for much of their lives. 1, so we die without justice and fairness. 2, we all have an intrinsic experience that fairness is a true value, that it's of overarching significance and importance, that justice is an eternal and critical value. So how do you resolve those 2 things? The answer is it's not over when it's over. That's a big deal. The answer is that this dimension of reality, this virtual reality that we live in, is wildly important and infinitely significant and infinitely valuable, but it's not the whole story. And I don't know that because a theologian told me, theologic. I don't know it because it's a dogma of a creationist. Right? I know that materialism is wrong because I know that my matter matters. I know that it actually matters. Justice, fairness matters. A child in every part of the world, right, says to the parent, each in a different language, it's not fair. And the child screams when it's not fair because the child experiences in their very being and body and their soma that reality should be fair. But if death is the end of the story, right, there's no justice, there's no fairness. So we actually know in our bodies, that's shocking, isn't it? We actually know in our bodies, it's an anthro-ontological lived realization of enlightenment that lives inside of us that tells us, wow, it's not over when it's over, right? Ultimately, there's going to be a balancing of the scales, right? Ultimately, right, it's going to work out. There's going to be a distribution of the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? That this inequity, right, that defines the human experience within the context of one lifetime is actually, as we experience it in our bodies are right, our matters matter. Meaning our matter, right, our somatic experience knows meaning, and actually, no, it's got to be fair. It's not okay. It's not okay to actually, right, experience genocide. But it's not okay for people to be born, right, into indelible poverty and then never be able to fight their way out of it, no matter how hard they try, right? Which is true for maybe 1 billion people on the globe right in this very second. And it's not, right? So, wow. Okay, so that's the 5th, right, expression, right, of this anthro-ontological knowing that it's not over when it's over. Okay, wow. I'm gonna give you just 2 more, right? There's actually 12 of them, but I'm gonna give you just 2 more, okay? And it's just wonderful. Number 6. When you actually step into the fullness of reality, which is the fullness of, we call it in Sufism or in Kashmir Shaivism and Hinduism, we call it the fullness of the divine name, of the name of God, right? And the name of God, for example, let's say in Hebrew, right, is eternity. Is the first letter means eternity, and the second three letters of the four-letter name of God means the now. So it's the eternity that lives in the now, right? It's the fullness of the now. And even the logical positivist Wittgenstein talked about the eternity of the now moment. And the eternity of the now moment, he said, is not everlasting time. It's the eternity that lives beneath time, right? That's an unshakable Wittgenstein, logical positivist, right? He says, but you can't deny the eternity that lives in the eternal now moment that's available, right underneath the surface for every human being. And you might get there sometimes through ecstatic dance, right? You just, right? You get there through lovemaking. You get there through the rapture, right, of beauty. You get there through the wonder of nature. You get there through the radical amazement in creativity. You get there through, now stay close, brothers and sisters, it's gorgeous. You get there through any activity that actually allows you to transcend, to end the trance of the surface, to access the depth of eternity that lives in the now. You get that through any activity which is priceless in that it has self-evident goodness. You're not doing it to get somewhere else. You're doing it for itself. So we make love. Why do we make love? Because for itself, right? Right? Why do we engage in creativity? Right? For itself. Why are we moved by beauty? Right? For itself. Right? Why do we want to align with goodness? For itself. Dostoevsky asked this question. He said, Raskolnikov wants to kill the old woman to see if he can get away with it. Maybe it's okay. And the whole point of Dostoevsky, right, Crime and Punishment, is that no, right? The reason we uphold value is not for social utilitarian reasons, right? But actually we honor the life of the old woman for itself. Value is intrinsic, right? The reason we're moved, right? This is the gorgeousness of the scientist. The scientist is moved, right? Steven Weinberg spent his entire life studying muons because he wanted to know the truth about them, and it had self-evident value. Anything we do, we dance. Why do we dance? We dance to dance, right? Dance me to the end of love, right? Anything that we do that has self-evident value, meaning we do it for its own sake, right? In interior sciences, it's called lishma, L-I-S-H-M-A, lishma. I do it for its own sake. It's not instrumental. It's not to get me somewhere. It's why I'm alive. It's self-evident meaning. When I step into with my full body, heart, and soul into any activity which has self-evident value and I just throw myself into it, oh my God, I actually get a taste of the eternity of the now. Play is another place we access it. When I actually have an experience of eternity, sometimes I get it on a medicine journey, right? Sometimes I get it in meditation. Sometimes I get it in other ecstatic practices, but time stands still, and I actually have a full first-person experience of eternity. I actually know directly, I have direct access in my body to the truth that we're beyond death. Wow. Direct access to eternity that actually lives in my body itself. Cha. Wow. I'm going to hold here. I'm just going to now make one more step, but I'm going to hold here in terms of, right, relating to the first shock of existence, right, which is the death of the individual human being. Now, friends, just this last gentle permission, right? Just stay with me one more moment. If I don't have an experience of my own eternity, meaning I don't have experience that my life is valuable beyond the win-lose metrics, right, that I'm engaged in this futile race against death, then the only thing left is that win-lose metrics. The only thing left is that success story, those two announcers who are trying to be successful and chic and, hot on the air, so their ratings are going to go up. And the movie is filled with scenes of win-lose metrics, whether it's Perry Isherwell, who's the head of Bash, who's in a win-lose metrics, whether it's the president, win-lose metrics, whether it's Jason, her son, win-lose metrics, whether it's Randall, who gets co-opted in the movie almost by the win-lose metrics and almost loses his way. And Teddy says to him, a man's always got choices until he finds his way back. It's like, wow, right? If I don't have an experience that actually that which is most precious is eternal, and it's not commodifiable, and it's infinitely gorgeous, and it transcends death, and it's all meaningful. The whole thing's meaningful, and I'm responsible to give my unique gifts and to live my unique life and to play my instrument in the unique self symphony. If I don't have those as intrinsic values, then actually the only thing left is this futile race, this futile success story that generates exponential technologies, that generates extraction models, that locks us into the banality, right, of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow that creeps in its petty pace, day after day, until we finally find ourselves facing existential risk generated by that win-lose metrics. And we're actually right before the last syllable of recorded time. And we think, oh my God, this was all a tale told by an idiot, full of sounds and furies signifying nothing. And Faulkner actually wrote the book, The Sound and the Fury. He won the Nobel Prize for it in 1949, playing off those words in Shakespeare. And the image is Quentin Compson, the protagonist, looks at a clock striking, and the face of the clock is broken. So there's no time being measured, and it's just talk, talk, talk. And Quentin Compson can't find meaning in all of it. So the second we have a failure of eros, which is a failure of meaning, which is a failure of the priceless, which is a failure of the measurable, because we've stopped telling a story of value. We've stopped understanding that I'm a unique self, and that I have a unique gift to give, that I'm much more than Homo sapien. I'm Homo amor. I'm a unique expression of the love, intelligence, and love beauty. The second we don't actually understand that we live beyond death, and that death is actually the constraint, the virtual reality structure, right? It's the scaffolding of our lives, which forces us to make choices, right? The reason death exists is because it forces us to confront that, at least in this run of life, we've got to make choices, and choices are valid, and choices are real, and our choices matter, right? Life tells us, it presses us into the fullness of life. But once we're pressed into the fullness of life, we actually experience that life is so irreducibly alive and valuable and full in all the 7 ways we outlined, that we actually have an intrinsic experience in our bodies that our life is going to go on beyond death. And therefore, we make choices in alignment, not with the win-lose metrics. We make choices in alignment with value, in alignment with joy, in alignment with the whole. And we live omni-considerate lives which are for the sake of the whole, where the whole lives in us and we live in the whole. And we're blown open, right? Loving each other, right? In ways that are unimaginable. Wow. Wow. It's only when we respond to the first shock of existence and we affirm the innate, intrinsic, immortal value of our lives that we begin to live lives that don't bring us to the second shock of existence, right? Oh my God. Okay. So we're at 216, friends. We're at 216. It's a big deal. Okay. It's a very, very big deal. Let's just take the last second here, friends. Okay. Take the last second. And I'm just going to read it out loud with you. And we're going to go to Krista. All right. Let's just read it. Right. Humanity will not have the capacity to look up and respond to existential risk until we move beyond and articulate first values and first principles. My uniqueness is a first value and first principle. The dignity of my personhood is a first value and first principle. In the end, it's only evolving first values and first principles that have the authority to demand that you look up, that we love madly. We love ourselves. We love our life. I love me. I love my life. I love you. I love your life. And that our love matters. Our love matters more than anything. And here's the last piece. We did 7 expressions of anthro-ontology. I'll finish with the 8th. We love each other. And when we love each other, we actually sense that love itself is eternal, that we'll all be together again. When I really love you, what do I say? We're going to be together forever, love.
I'll find you in the next lifetime. But that's not because we're deluded. It's not because we're terrified. It's because that truth lives in us. It's a cross-cultural, universal truth. When you really fall in love, you begin speaking the language of eternity, which is forever, which is I love you forever, because that's the anthro-ontological knowing. And we've got to reclaim, not in a fundamentalist way, not as creationists. We've got to reclaim the eternity of life. We've got to reclaim the dignity of that with all our passion, with all our being. Wow. Oh my God. Krista, take us inside.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Gaffney. Wow, what a wild and beautiful invitation to walk together, to face death together, and walk through and realize that our life is infinitely powerful and it infinitely matters. So this is our invitation for us here every week, because Mark said it so beautifully. We are the gifts that Cosmos gives to itself. So all of us being here together is an amazing, powerful, and beautiful gift that we get to study together, that we get to listen to the Dharma together, but also that we get to practice together, becoming outrageous lovers, being outrageous lovers, and committing our outrageous acts of love for its own sake. And I can tell you from my own experience being in this community, being in this Dharma, the best part about it is the part where I get to say yes, where I get to participate, where I get to step in more and more and more and feel the power of love rising in each and every one of us. So this is my invitation to you to listen to your own inner calling, your own anthro-ontological desires. How do you want to step in? How do you want to participate? So I just want to take a few minutes to guide you through the different steps that you can take to join this awesome revolution. So one of the things that you, of course, have to do is make this commitment to yourself to show up here every week and to drink in this beautiful Dharma. So put it in your calendar. Make sure that you are here, because I can guarantee you that that will definitely transform your own personal life. And then the second invitation is to participate by co-creating. We are creating beautiful teams of people working on different projects, and there are behind the scenes a lot of awesome projects going on. But one of the two main ones is, of course, the publishing of the Great Library. We are publishing a very long list of books, and around One Mountain, we're going to publish the Evolutionary Love Code book and the Evolutionary Sermon book. So we need all hands on deck working on those editing books. And so if you want to step into that, please reach out to me at support@onemountainmanypaths.org. But from this One Mountain broadcast, we're also launching a podcast, which is exciting and also something that we need people to step into and help us with. So whatever your expertise is, whatever your unique gift is, if you are excited about this Dharma, please just find me. And I would love to get to know you so we can start working together. And of course, the last way, and maybe the best way, is by showing up and becoming a member of One Mountain. And while I'm speaking, I want to share my screen to show you where you can do that. If you go to our website, onemountainmanypaths.org, and you click here on partnership, you can read about what it means to become an evolutionary partner of One Mountain Many Paths. And if you scroll down, you can see that you can choose your own contribution. It starts already from $25 a month, but we recommend and encourage everyone to give as much as you can, because Mark already said it, we are not here to play the game of the win-lose metrics. We are here to come together, to give as much as we can and make our contribution to the future of humanity together. So please give whatever you can. And if you don't want to make a monthly contribution, you can also click right here and make your donation there. If you scroll all the way down, you can see the beautiful courses that we offer to our members, where you can participate in. These are self-study courses, 9 courses like Reclaiming Eros, or the Evolution of Love, or our First Steps of Homo Amor, which you can study in your own time. But Christina mentioned in the beginning, right now we have a study group around the course, the 11th Hour, which is a course with Dr. Mark Gaffney and Barbara Marx-Hubbard together. And you can still join until this Saturday. And after that, this group will close and go on a beautiful evolutionary journey together. So for any of this, please find me at support@onemountainmanypaths.org, and I'm happy to get to know you and help you with any way I can. And with that, I turn my word back to you, Dr. Mark. Thank you.
Take us inside. Take us inside. Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Oh my God. Right. Welcome everyone. Like what a wild, critical, gorgeous week. Take us inside, Krista. Right. Let's just like feel it. Let's dance it. Right. Let's go. Just wake up all the way alive and good. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.